And we're back here on the show. It's me, Hugh. Jen is here, and we've got Audrey Lawson joining us here. Audrey, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to
So
have
you're going to be in the Raw Artist Show coming up.
Yes.
Are you going to be there both days?
No, I'll be there on Thursday, the 15th.
The 15th, okay.
Yes.
And what is your story? How did you become a visual artist?
I grew up with a mother who's a painter, so ever since I was young, I was exposed to her in her studio. Her studio was in the house, so she would set me up with my own project so that she could go into her studio and do her thing. And I have two older brothers, and it was obvious from a young age, my mom says, that I was most drawn to it. So my parents were both very supportive of that, and I did it my whole life, and I was always a daydreamer in school. I was a doodler. So naturally, when I went to university, I studied fine art, specializing in painting and drawing. And then after university, I was trying to figure out what to do with this art degree, and graphic design was just blowing up. So I actually became more interested in design, ended up studying fashion design, but while I was doing the fashion, I realized I was more interested in the flat illustrative side of fashion more than the construction and the model drawing in fashion school. So I switched back into painting on a canvas about 3 years ago, and I've been doing that full-time ever since.
Did you ever have an urge to totally rebel against your mother and become an accountant or?
No.
No, never?
No. Actually, that's not true. I felt a strong sense that I needed to start a business. So for a number of years, I was doing that. I worked towards a fitness business, a tech fitness business, for a while.
How'd that go?
It was going well, but then a competitor moved into Toronto just as I was launching, but it's all worked out for the best now. So
yeah, that's great.
I'm glad.
So you're very happy doing the visual arts now
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. So one bit of bad timing actually ended up being a good thing for you.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason, and it's not always easy to see that in the moment, but retrospect it all makes sense.
Now we've got a couple of your images here that we can kind of look at. Maybe we can look at them and then talk about how they came to be. No, you brought a really big one in. Maybe we can look at that one first. There's one, and then we got a detail of that too. Let's tell us about this one.
This one I've called the gloaming. The gloaming is the time after sunset and before darkness, so it's sort of dusk, twilight. And when I start doing these paintings, I don't know how they're going to look at the end of it, and I actually paint them upside down so that I'm not too focused on what it looks like. I'm more just thinking about playing with the paint, and then I flip it upside down, sometimes halfway through to see where it's at, and then flip it back and continue.
That's interesting.
Does that actually apply to? Do you do a lot of these kind of sunset? This is over water, I guess, or it feels like it's over water, but it's actually just the feeling of it. It's not.
It's
necessarily
a feeling
that's
of
what
it.
That is.
Yeah, to me, they're sort of sitting in between landscape and abstraction. My work up until this series I started in August, was always figurative. My whole life, I've worked doing figures, sometimes more representational and sometimes more abstracted. But after my last show in July, I wanted to make a change, and I was feeling like my old work was very constricted, so I wanted to open it up. And by doing this, it allowed me to play more with the paint, and it's more fun. I'm enjoying it very much.
Is this more what you're doing now? These large, colorful canvases?
Yeah, in my studio, I do the large oil landscape abstract paintings, and then every Friday, a group of artists and me do life drawing, and in that I do watercolor.
Now we do have a life drawing here.
Yes.
So is this an example of the other now that we're going to see?
It is, yes. This is from one of the classes.
All right, so let's...
It's not a class, but
did you have a model
it's a
for that?
This is from a model, yes.
Okay.
And that's watercolor.
Yes.
Okay, watercolor I find very, very difficult because it's you have to be so careful and it's so constrained in terms of, like, if you make a mistake, you're screwed. I think that's the way. But this is beautiful. Like, this is more delicate and more detailed than I usually see watercolors. And this, how long a pose was this?
The pose would have been. We do 3-hour sessions and start off by doing a minute, maybe 5,
just like
a
quick
minute.
gestural drawings.
Yeah, and then we do a 15 minutes, which we usually extend to half an hour because it's not long enough, and then the rest of the session we'll do one pose. So this would have been about 2 hours.
And would that have? Do you actually take a break at a point during that 2 hours, or do you just go straight through?
We take a break. I'd prefer not to take a break, but the model needs a break, and it would be against human rights to. This one looks pretty comfortable, but some of her positions are a little more strenuous. So
this is almost like practice, it seems, for you, right?
It's funny you use that word because somebody else said that the other day, but I brought up the point that it's all practice, regardless of whether it turns out to be a finished product or not.
Yeah.
I find when you put those, like the pressure of, okay, this is going to be a finished work, then that never turns out successfully because I find it's too tight. You're not gonna experiment and allow yourself to make mistakes because, as you were saying, those mistakes, they actually add life to the picture.
Right.
They're a positive thing.
Right. Somebody once told me that she knew that she was supposed to be a musician because when she was making music and she made what would have been a mistake to somebody else, that leads her to a new discovery.
It's true.
And that's when she realized that was her art. So I always think that when you can figure out where you forgive yourself for your mistakes and where your mistakes are actually a good thing, that's where you know you've landed in the right place.
And maybe when you can catch it early enough that you can sort of mold it in a positive direction rather than just going with the mistake a little too far.
Which is what I guess the experience comes from. So then,
yes,
yeah, it's lovely. That was it's just extraordinary that you actually do your life drawing with watercolor, though. So you actually use watercolor the way that most people would use a pencil.
Yes,
but the idea of you know the pressure of the finished work actually kind of killing the art part of it, though, that must be very different from the graphic design side of you, because there you actually are working towards something that's
yes. And I don't think that's I'm not the best graphic designer, I'll say that now. So it's probably why, like we were talking about happy accidents, I'm not in graphic design now.
And because of course those things in graphic design aren't necessarily the way that you have to behave when you're producing something, especially for a client, I suppose, that you actually have to be...
Exactly. When, they set expectations and you're like, oh, but
this would be so much more beautiful, and...
Doesn't work out like that.
Yeah. Now, where do you see your the direction of your art going forward?
I'd like to continue with these abstract landscapes. This one is one of the more realistic of this series. I'd like to experiment more with pushing them further into abstraction. I'd also like to work much larger. And
because that was a pretty big one.
That's 41 by 48 inches.
Yeah.
I would love to do maybe 6 feet by 7 feet or so.
Wow.
Now,
why do you want to do so big? Why do you want to do that?
Is it exciting?
Because for these images, I feel like they need to be big because you want to be inside of them.
They're
so
like
if it's
picture
bigger,
windows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think bigger is better in this case. I don't feel that way about the watercolors, so it's not like I feel everything should be big, but with these ones, I think they could go bigger.
So pretty much sticking with the landscapes, with the watercolor human form. Anything else you want to get into, maybe?
These are both fairly new. In my life drawing sessions, I've always used charcoal, so I've only started using the watercolor in the past 2 months or so.
I think that's great, though.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Because you get kind of bored of the charcoal. Where here you have the color.
I just get
that
messy.
Feel of that watercolor.
Yeah.
I can't use charcoal because I end up with a mustache, usually a Hitler mustache at some point.
You have to embrace that. You walk out like, don't touch me.
Embrace your inner Hitler.
Oh, yes.
And I find that the charcoal, at least for me, I lost some of the sensitivity that I feel you can pick up with watercolor.
Right.
Yeah.
It's neat. It's delicate and
and when you don't have use a pencil to create the composition underneath the watercolor, then you can sort of let the image emerge as you're going.
Because you never really have a line, so to speak, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
You always
if you start light enough, then you can morph it as you're going along.
Now, do all your abstract these sort of abstract works, do they all have a quality of reflection, like that when you turn them upside down, there is like because this one definitely has kind of like an x-axis through it, but do most of them, or do many of them, or
do you mean the horizon line where when you I would almost I would say 90% of them have that reflection, because actually when I started the first one upside down, I was planning on it being upside down, and it was sort of I felt like I was painting water. So that's why it was interesting when I flipped it
and then all of a sudden your water is the sky, and that's really cool.
One thing I noticed, I'm just going to lay this on you.
Okay.
I think I know where totem poles came from.
Where?
Because if you look at a northern lake with the reflection of the shoreline, the rocks and the trees on the still water.
Yes.
If you flip it up 90 degrees, it looks like a totem pole. You see faces and all this kind of stuff.
So I just got shivers.
I'm just
I
going
to
leave that with you and see what happens.
I'm going to dive back into Emily Carr for a bit.
I'm going to be rotating some images on my computer when I get home.
Yeah, okay, cool.
When did you notice that?
Did
you just...
4 years ago.
That's really cool. Insights on that.
Yeah.
So no,
revelation.
You're here at the Raw show coming up on you're there the 15th, right?
15th, yeah. 15th.
So you're going to be showing some of your work there. People can buy it.
Yep, I'm going to have this painting, and I'm actually, once I leave here, I'm going to pick up, I've had a number of art prints done of my watercolors, so I'm going to be selling them framed as well.
Great.
Very nice.
And the originals.
Okay.
Lovely.
Yes.
Well, I think you're a real artist. I can just tell by the way you're talking about the work that you do. So
thank you.
I just want to say thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for having me. It was great to be here. And
do you have a website or anything online where people can get and stay in touch with you?
I do, yeah. It's audreylawson.com, AudreyLawson.com.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks, Audrey.
Thank you.
Love to have you back anytime. So
Thanks.
Let us know whatever's new with you, and love to have you back.
Great. I look forward to it.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to take a little break. Still got so much more coming up on Look What Much. I think Laura Nashman's going to be on next, and we shall continue. So we'll see you in a couple minutes.